No, not the minister, not the anchor minister for Jalan Besar JRC, but somebody whom I think actually I would have a far more interesting conversation with. Welcome everyone to episode 119, I believe. Okay, so if I get the numbers wrong, please forgive me. It's all a whirlwind these few days. So welcome. I have invited this brilliant young person on. Joe went viral after she responded to Eugene Tan with the claim that Eugene Tan made that there is no evidence. Professor Eugene Tan, and I know Eugene. I actually invited him on as well to discuss this with Joe, but he was unable to make it. He's in the States. So Joe went viral after she did a TikTok video explicating the evidences that she claimed Eugene claimed did not exist. So today I will have Joe on and then we can discuss. Hello, Joe.
Hello, Walid. Nice to
Hello,
see you.
hi. Hi, thank you so much for doing this. And for those who may not know, Joe is doing you are doing your masters at Oxford now
Yeah,
in.
mathematical and theoretical physics.
So that's a different level, man. This is not political science, So, so that's really a different level. So much respect for you. And what was your undergrad on? In and
Math
where?
and physics.
Where was it?
A little bit in Yale and US College, a little bit in the Netherlands.
Okay, so it was a joint degree, is it?
No, not necessarily. There was the Yale and US closure, as you might know.
Okay. Oh, right. All right. Yeah. So for those who are watching, thank you. But shouldn't you guys be at a rally or something? I just I just came back from a rally. I came back from Go Ming Singh's rally. And why did I go there? So that other people don't have to, and I can report on it. But Joe, so you reached superstardom in the past couple of weeks, right? In the past few weeks because of your response to Eugene Tan.
Yeah.
So maybe can you
Mm.
tell us what that was about?
Yeah, so I've been doing quite a few videos, especially on the EBRC reports, even before the current 2025 report came out. I was looking at the 2021. I'm from Jalan Besar, GRC.
Oh, Jotio.
Jalan Besar, Jotio, correct. Jalan Besar has two Jotios. Um, and that already gained some traction. I think it resonated with a lot of people. The boundary drawing issue is something that we can see with our naked eyes, right? But it's something that's been dismissed very quickly by the ruling party and dismissed by some academics, Eugene Tan included. They're telling us not to believe what our eyes are telling us, even though it should be pretty obvious. And I'm quite frustrated with how they've dismissed us so quickly. What I'm saying is not anti-PAP, anti-government, right? It's like calling for a little bit more accountability, but because they're dismissing us so fast, okay, well, I give you some numbers. That one is a bit harder to dismiss. It's a bit harder for you to convince me that 2 plus 2 equals to 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although Joe, one of the PAP candidates actually said 1 plus 1 doesn't equals to 2 or something. I don't know what he said.
Is
Yeah,
it?
so he tried to convince us. He did try to
Ayo,
convince us. So there are people who try such things. But
can try, but
this,
a bit harder.
of course. There are a few comments. So a lot of people seem to have watched the online rally. So I did catch WP's one as well, and I think there were some pretty good ones. Pritam was, I believe he's still speaking. I don't know. But just before this, so he was obviously good. I think some of the newer ones, it took a while for them to warm up. But yeah. So anyway, so can you tell us the details of those
Of
of
what?
your claim that Eugene Tan is wrong?
Oh,
Yeah.
strong. It's a broader claim that maybe the EBRC has done a slightly sloppy job in their drawing of the boundaries, and there's three main points that I raised when I was responding to them. The first one is the distribution of the elected to MP ratio, right? In the EBRC white paper, they did mention that this is their primary role. So you would expect them to do pretty well if they have one main job. So the EBRC never claimed to have like spatially compact boundaries to try and preserve geographical identity. The one thing they say is preserving a consistent elector to MP ratio, but what we see is that it's actually not as consistent as we would like. There's, I think, a 50% difference is what I found between the district with the lowest elector MP ratio, which is Kebun Baru, and the district with the highest, which I think is Bukit Panjang.
Bukit
With
Panjang, indeed.
22,000, yeah,
22,000 and
22,000 to
33,000, right?
32. Yes, that's a very huge difference. It's 50%. Like, you don't need a mathematician to tell you that it's a big difference, right? Like, we can definitely see it. And how come Bukit Panjang residents, their votes matter less, their voices are less represented in parliament? Like, that's not something that we should accept for a board whose singular job is to maintain that ratio. But there's a couple other things that I looked at. For example, partisan symmetry. So it's the idea of how the number of, like, how you would want the popular vote to reflect the party's representation in parliament. And we see that there's quite a disconnect between these two values. So I think in the 2020 election, the PAP got like just above 60% of the popular vote, but they got a super majority in parliament, about like 89% of the seats in parliament. So it doesn't really reflect the voting habits and the choices of the population
What has
that
that got to
clearly.
do with gerrymandering, though, Joe? Isn't that just a function of first past or plurality system? First
Yeah,
past the post, yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, it's a first past the goal system, but there's also a lot of people questioning the GRC system itself, which we can also go into.
Yes,
And
and
the
it's related to your earlier point, right? The GLC system, because let's say I am in Tampines, so one vote of mine potentially could bring in 5 MPs, right? Um,
yes,
and somebody from Kebun Baru or somebody from Bukit Panjang, already it's the biggest SMC. But no matter what, your vote is only for one MP, right? So
yeah, exactly. So I think we can think about whether like what place the GRC system has in our
yeah,
current democracy. Maybe it's a little bit obsolete. That one I haven't
yeah.
really read this yet. So if I'm saying anything, it's personal opinion, not any kind of academic claims. The third thing that I looked at regarding gerrymandering was the compactness of our district. So this is very standard across political sciences. It's not something that I invented. None of the work I'm doing is very profound. I'm just running the numbers for the Singapore context. If anyone's looking for the actual resources, actual academics, I recommend Making Democracy Count by Ismar Volic. He's a math professor and founder of Institute for Mathematics and Democracy in the US. A lot of the methods are expounded on in his book, and that's what I applied in my work. And we look at the compactness of our electoral districts, and we see that they're not very compact. And this is something that we can also see with our naked eye, right? Like I was saying, it's quite visually obvious to us. Like, how come Marine Parade looks like that? There's been a lot of memes about Marine Parade, so specifically looking like Marge Simpson
Yeah.
or something like that. But it's very hard to quantify this in arguments, especially if you're bringing it up in parliament. So how we can bring numbers to the table is using a couple different compactness metrics. The ones that I performed, I calculated the Polsby-Popper score. There's a few other metrics out there, but consistently across the board, you see that our districts are not very compact. And we don't expect them to be fully compact because of the population distribution in our city. But given that Singapore is like pretty much all urban, we don't really have urban-rural divide. We have a pretty consistent population density compared to a lot of other countries' populations. You would expect us to perform a little bit better on these compactness tests for our gerrymandering compared to other countries, but we see that that's not necessarily the case with our newer boundaries.
That is really excellent work, Joe. So thank you. You have done Singapore and Singaporeans a service, honestly, because as you said, this is something that all of us see. All of us see the boundaries. All of us experience it, right? Because
Yeah,
some people don't move, and then they have been in 3 constituencies, right? And
yeah,
this is amazing. And Sarabjit is right. I mean, even I, who have talked about this before, I haven't crunched the numbers the way that you did, right? So really, fair play to you, and this is amazing. Z says that as well. Chiyun says that as well. So thank you. This is fantastic. And I just wanted to say something, that the thing about gerrymandering is you cannot definitively prove it, right? cannot definitively prove it because, like a lot of things, it requires intent. Hold on, just give me 1 second. So I need to off the fan because it may affect the sound. So gerrymandering, uh, to prove it without a shadow of a doubt, you need intent, right? Like people intended to. But stopping short of that, what else can we show, right? What you are doing is you are not making the claim just that, but you are showing evidences towards that. And then they have to refute these evidences, right? Using data as well. So
Yeah.
this is what the people who say that it doesn't exist, they have and now that you have given the proof, the burden of proof is now on them, right? To counter your
Exactly.
claim.
That's the goal, because in Parliament I watched a lot of gerrymandering debates before, and they never get anywhere, right? Opposition can just say like, oh, can you talk a bit about gerrymandering? Ruling party say, oh, there's no gerrymandering, but neither side brings anything quantitative to the table, so it doesn't push the discussion forward. Like you said, even if I don't give you like direct evidence of gerrymandering, at least if they're responding to me, they also have to be a bit more quantitative. We can push it forward. Maybe we can even set certain standards for the EBRC that are a
100%.
bit more concrete. Yeah.
100%. What are those standards that we can, I mean, we can think of a few together now, no? And that may be fun also. And the audience as well, please type in those standards, right? I just based on what you said, I think we can have a more consistent voter to electors, voter to elected MP ratio. I think if the SMC is the lowest is 22,000, the highest cannot be 33,000, right? It should be
Yeah.
25, 22 to 25. That's still reasonable, right? But at least have what,
Exactly.
10% or plus minus 10%, maximum
Yeah.
plus minus 20%, right? But
Mm.
if it's 50%, that is crazy already.
Yeah. We can also think about quantifying that number. And before I go into that, one of the examples that I raised about how come this is so problematic is looking at Sengkang GRC and Marine Parade Braddell Heights GRC. Both of these are very arbitrary. You can give them 4 or 5 MPs, and they will fall within the range that I've plotted already. They'll fall within the range from Kebun Baru to Bukit Panjang. So now you can ask, how come Sengkang got 4 MPs and Marine Parade Braddell Heights got 5, or the other
Yeah,
way around? Either ways, they need to justify that because their numbers don't show it
yeah,
as clearly, obviously, as you want. And if they don't justify that, it feels a little bit arbitrary. And given that Sengkang is kind of a contested
yeah,
district, you question it a little bit. Again, no direct accusations or no
yeah,
straight evidence.
yeah.
So,
So there are a
Um,
few questions here. Will PAP even respond to her analysis? Well, I mean, that's you've done your job as a citizen. Now, for the rest
mm,
of us, is to put this in the public sphere and then see the response. There's a question. I hope no comment. I hope you don't get POFMAT for saying this. What is that to be POFMAT for? I mean, you are just putting out the facts. You are not saying
yeah,
definitively there's gerrymandering, but you're saying there's evidence that points towards it. But we need to hear an explanation. That's all, right? We don't know what goes on behind closed doors in all of that. But the one thing I would say is, if this perception exists, that perception is enough to damage the credibility of the institution. So they have to come out and respond, right? So even if they
yeah.
say it's
I
not
hope
true, but
so.
if a lot of people believe it's true, then perception becomes reality in politics,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And given how much traction my videos have gained, I think it's easy to say that what I'm saying is not novel, it's not profound. It's
No,
a lot of people have been saying this
it's
already.
novel. It's novel in a particular way. You're right that a lot of people, you don't have to be humble, this is not the place to be humble. This is not CNA. So, so for it is not novel in the sense that a lot of people have made that claim. It is novel in the sense that you're putting meat to the bones, right? You are giving, you are really strengthening the argument in a way that I haven't seen before. So well done. So Sarabjit said, "This is such a compliment. I hope some parties are watching this and invite you as part of their strategy team." And tell us if that happens. Kasim says we need to put a limit on the variance or standard deviation. Yeah, that
Yeah,
sounds good. Yeah, that's.
I
You have any
agree.
comments on that? Yeah.
Yeah, we mentioned that earlier. You were saying, oh, it should be 10% to
Yeah,
20% difference instead of 50% difference. I think there's some way that we can quantify it. Of course, I don't have access, or I haven't fully looked at the data, but maybe we can look at the neighborhood sizes. If you're drawing around neighborhoods, then your plus minus percentage should be relative to the size of one neighborhood. So you don't want to cut a neighborhood in half, so you can kind of draw a line around a
yeah,
neighborhood. So if you look at HDB data, how big an average neighborhood is, that really should give you an idea of like how many,
yeah.
like how much variance you should allow, and maybe that can give us something more concrete than us just throwing out, it should be 10
Correct.
20% instead.
Yeah, that's excellent. And also maybe the radius of the the diameter of the GRC also matters, right? Because I find it strange. And what is it if you and then the worst thing is, right? The one of
Mm.
the worst things is maybe not the worst, but then politicians will say we have the Tampines identity, right? But the
Ayo.
next 5 years later, there's Tampines Jangkat, it's redrawn already. What is that identity if it keeps getting redrawn, right?
Yeah.
East Coast identity, East Coast best side, East Side best side. But then East Coast is no longer the East Coast of 2020. So all that, it becomes a bit of a joke if you say that, and
Mm.
a lot of these things. And I don't know
Yeah.
whether you've watched Alfian Saad's play, GRC, and he was just
Mm.
making fun of this, and he as usual is ahead of his time, right? That's what Tampines, Kallang, Choa Chu Kang, GRC or something, like this. So from east to west, like, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
yes,
definitely. My own district, Jalan Besar, stretches from the edge of Toa Payoh all the way down to Keppel. And I think any Singaporean can tell you that those are very different parts of Singapore, very different
100%,
vibes. You get more heartland vibes in Toa
100%.
Payoh, very different from Keppel's vibe. So in terms of any kind of geographical identity that I get out of my GRC, I don't really relate to.
Yeah.
Personally, I relate a bit more to my closest MRT station, more than any.
Yeah, so what is
Yeah.
this identity? Let's not pretend like that is. So Ravin says, of course, but people in the east, they do believe that there is east side, west side, right? But it's not the way that the geographical boundaries are drawn. Ravin asked Joe, did you have trouble getting the data?
Not really. Everything is readily available on data.gov, so you just need to learn how to deal with their
Okay.
data formats. I think the EBRC report came out on a Tuesday. My friends texted me by Wednesday. The data was already readily available for me to analyze.
Right.
So it's been quite fast paced since
Right.
the report's released. Mm.
There's a question here. Sorry, I would like it if we are just following URA town planning boundaries and peg the representation of the MP to the ratio of population there. No, and this is a good point. No, see, Singaporeans have so many ideas, right? And what you have opened the door for a more serious discussion than what has already transpired. Um, and we need to understand that this ultimately there are political dimensions to this, right? And you have opened the door in another way as well. I don't know whether it was on purpose, but it seems like it was on purpose based on what you said at the very start of this show, which is we need to even rethink the GRC system. And the
Mm.
events of yesterday, I think, corroborate what you're saying, because if the ministers can be moved here, moved there, and so on to give an electoral advantage, then we have to start thinking about the purpose of the GRC as well, while
Mhm.
while trying to ensure minority representation, or at the very least, we should have a serious discussion. So, Steve Visti asked, shouldn't all parties be invited for the drawing of boundaries discussion? Absolutely. I'm perfectly okay with
Mm.
that. I presume you are as well, Joe?
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
And I think Joe should be involved in those discussions as well. Let's nominate Joe as our citizen
Yeah.
representative. Does this chat signal a future joint study by the both of you to definitively analyze the mathematical elements of the EBRs? Actually, I don't mind, writing a short paper together with you with your mathematical brain, and I can bring in the political side, and we can take that offline. Um, the scope of
Happy to. I think my Google Scholar page will be quite an interesting eclectic mix for academics.
Yeah. So what's the rationale for drawing the boundaries so close to election date? It puts the opposition at a huge disadvantage. I agree. I agree with that. So That's another thing. So actually, it's not just the GRC. There's everything, the EBRC, the timing of the election and the EBRC report, the composition of the EBRC, the GRCs. I think there's room for a lot of serious discussions about all of this. So should should GRCs be grouping people that are more similar together or trying to spread the people out further? For instance, should Tampines be redrawn so there is less of a Malay population bias? Well, the thing about Singapore, based on the HDB quotas, there will never be a constituency that is majority Malay or Indian. There isn't. So Tampines has about 24 to 25% Malays, which is the proportion of Malays is about 15% in the country, right? So it's not that much higher and it's not the majority. So hopefully somebody is not, Sam, I hope you are not fearful of having 10% more Malays in a constituency. Right? And I say this because I've heard also, oh, Ishun, there's so many Indians. What are you talking about? It's just slightly above national average or what? It's just that it's more Indians than other constituencies, and then you think that it's too many Indians, right? So
Yeah.
there's a comment here. There should be a stronger push for accountability from ELD. They have to give stronger reasoning for their decisions. Do you have any comments on that?
I completely agree. I think maybe I haven't been that attuned to the previous electoral cycles, but this is the first one where we're questioning the EBRC specifically instead of like the PAP, the ELD as well. So I think if they respond to my comments, hopefully that pushes for more transparent white papers in the future. I'm hoping to see something that's a little bit longer and justifying some of the statistical properties that we see in the distributions. Like how come they can allow 50% to
Yeah.
occur, for example, where they got that number from, how they're setting that threshold. Because I've given you the reasoning of like taking the size of an average HDB
Yeah.
neighborhood to set that threshold. I want to know where they're setting their standards from.
Yeah, and one of the things that maybe I could urge people is to be interested in this and push for this, even after elections. We don't want just the enthusiasm to wane off after the elections, right? So because this is about a long-term change, so I think we
Yeah.
should be willing to put in the effort, just like Joe has. The rest of us as well, we need to put in the effort to ensure that if we want systemic change, it's not just going to come out of thin air. We need to hold ourselves accountable as well, right? In terms of pushing for it. So thank you, Joe. Has anybody reacted to you yet?
In what sense? A lot of reactions.
So yeah, how's the reaction? Positive, negative, or who have reacted? Has government officials contacted you or?
No, I haven't been contacted by any government officials. I've been contacted by some opposition parties, some opposition politicians, but I think a lot of the nuance of my argument got lost in their interpretation of it. Their interpretation, like, oh, electoral fraud.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
Not right. A lot of young people have responded with overwhelming support. I think we're a bit sick of getting taken to be stupid.
Yeah.
Which, like, if you can see it with your naked eye, if you just dismiss it, it's a bit condescending, lah. So there's been support in that sense, but there's also been quite a lot of hate from PAP supporters, and I think they're misinterpreting what I'm saying as being anti-PAP, anti-government. It really isn't. I think it's just being a good citizen. Like, if you're trying to hold your ruling party up to higher standards instead of just letting them do whatever they want. I think equally patriotic, if not more, to be holding the ruling party
100%.
to those standards and to
100%. And why are you said the pro PAP supporters, is it? The PAP supporters?
yeah.
Why are they making noise? If they think EBRC is independent, then why are they saying you're criticizing the PAP? You're not criticizing the PAP, right? You're criticizing the
That,
EBRC. So you can't have your cake and eat
that
it, right? So are they what is that? why are they upset? But anyway, so Kasim said he agrees that gerrymandering cannot be proven beyond doubt, but a proper study using the data can give us the probability. Agreed. It points us in a direction, even if we cannot prove it in a court of law. will you agree with a complete abolishment of GRCs and converting everything to an SMC? So based on your mathematical knowledge of what has transpired, is this something you are in favor of?
I cannot give you an answer based on my mathematical knowledge because I run those numbers. But like you said, what happened yesterday, they keep moving ministers around. So having any kind of geographical identity or rapport with your MP is also undermined by this system if they can just keep
True.
moving around. Firstly. Secondly, I think it decreases the quality of our candidates on both sides, right? If you have a GRC, if you have something called an anchor minister, just the concept
Yeah.
of an anchor minister, one really popular
Yeah.
minister able to elect 5 people from a party into parliament. I think that allows them to drop to a slightly lower standard with their other candidates. Whereas if they were contesting all as individuals, every single individual will have to prove to us why they deserve our vote.
100%. I completely agree. Although I have been a fan of so I agree with your arguments. I have been a fan of the JRC because I think it's still essential to guarantee minority representation. Increasingly, I'm getting a bit more disillusioned because of, the maneuvering and having such big GRCs. And also the democratic element is compromised, right? Just now I said, like, one Tampines voter potentially can affect five. And then you also
Yeah.
mentioned the voter to MP ratio. But also forcing us to choose. Let's say there are 5 candidates. I like one of them, I don't like 3 of them. Right? Then what
Yeah.
happens? But I really like that one. So what happens? Then I'm supposed to vote for them, or what is it? Because it's all, you can't separate the vote, right? So the democratic elements are indeed compromised. I'm thinking what is the best way, what is the
Mm.
best compromise? And my solution was have a 2% GRC, right? And then you have a minimum amount of GRCs, and the
Mm.
majority of your seats can still be SMCs in order to basically counter some of the problems you've already mentioned, right? Free riding, riding on the
Yeah.
coattails, perception issues.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. So many arguments for this GRC system. I think it also disadvantages opposition. I'm not
Yeah.
necessarily like pro opposition, but I think all of us love an underdog story. And if, like you said, if you have 5 seats within a GRC, you need 5 convincing opposition
Yeah.
candidates to even win that GRC. Even if one candidate is excellent, it's very hard for them to win just because they're excellent. It's different from having an anchor minister as the incumbent,
Of course,
right? So
incumbency advantage, and then the minister is more exposed to the public, right? So
yeah.
is a newsmaker. You are featured in the news more, so it's completely
Mm.
different. You are right. It does disadvantage the
Yeah.
opposition, and
And
you're right.
I
You don't need to support the opposition to one good electoral contest. Even if you support the PAP, I think you should
correct.
want good electoral contest because you want the PAP to bring in the best as well, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people don't realize that
yeah,
or over this
yeah, yeah,
nuance. You can biggest PAP supporter and still want them to do better.
yeah. Exactly, 100%. Yeah, and I'm happy to say also, that there are many PAP MPs that I like. There are some I don't like, but there are many PAP MPs I like, including mine, and some of them I've interviewed before, and I really have admiration for some of them. Um, But I can see if voters are put in a position where they want this good guy, but their teammate is not as good, right? Whereas it allows you to basically cover the flaws of your teammates.
Mm.
Whereas if you're in an SMC, you have to do the heavy lifting yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we even say that having 5 in a GRC is better than 1 or 2, like they do 5 times more work? Yeah, we can't, I think. So that's the issue, right? Because they will still do the work of one MP. It's just that they are campaigning together. The voters do not have that choice of extricating one from the other. Uh, so now we are now seeing arguments that there's free riding in GRCs where the opposition and incumbent as well. So it works both ways, and minimizing the size of a GRC may help. this is absolutely true because if Pritam goes somewhere, I believe he can take 3 or 4 MPs with him as well. So, and I don't want that as well, you know. So that is something I am uncomfortable with as well because Pritam can bring in anyone, anyone. Joe, you and I, we have to contest beside Pritam, we would win, right? So, I know you contesting on your own, you'll win as well. But I contest alongside Pritam with
Maybe.
any other person also, we'll win, we'll become MPs. So I do think it's a problem both ways. Do you have any comments about this, about Arif Fadiat's comments?
I think it's not necessarily with the bigger opposition parties, but the rest of the opposition. We often treat opposition as a monolith, but there's a lot of smaller parties. I can barely keep track of all of them, but getting closer to nomination days, you see the smaller parties get join together. And I don't know the official term for it. Even though their policies or their viewpoints might be quite different, so they're not even coming out with a united front. They're just combining because they need the
Right.
numbers.
The coalition, yeah. Yeah.
I don't think that's very.
Right. Okay. Good. Oh, this is a good question. This is an existential question. Will Gomeng Singh win if he contests beside Pritam? This one, I need
Well,
10 Teh Tarik sessions to uncover this question. Thank God this
you
only
can
exists.
I can run the simulations.
Please run the simulations. Yeah, this can only exist. Thankfully, this scenario in an alternate universe. So, Joe. So let's move on. We've done about 30 plus minutes on this. So, I wanted to ask a few things because you're a first time voter. Don't even think somebody mentioned. Don't even think Obama can get Gomeng Singh into parliament. But Gomeng Singh came on my show, okay? So yes, I won't
I
say I won't say too many negative things about him. So what is the sense now amongst young voters? You're a first-time voter. How are you feeling? Excited? And what is the sense from at least your circle? You can't speak for young voters in general, you know, but your circles. What is the sense now? What is the mood?
Right. It's a lot of mixed feelings, I'd say. Of course, excitement at finally being able to cast our vote, firstly, and then also some jadedness knowing that there's a good chance that your vote won't really matter, depending on the districts that you're living in. The one I'm in personally, I think my vote really wouldn't matter. It wouldn't change the outcome of the elections too much. There's some more exciting districts that my friends are in, but one thing that we're also seeing is a shift. That I think there's the narrative that's been pushed for a long time in Singapore's history that maybe contributed to the success of the PAP. There's the narrative of like going from the third world to first. For example, there's a very strong narrative, very strong national identity behind that. But my generation coming in, we've never really experienced that third world side of things, right? It's not like we're not grateful for this first world, but we also want to see like what next. Or it doesn't resonate so strongly with us that we came from this story of fishing village to the metropolis that we are today. We want to see a lot more concrete things that are appropriate for this modern era that we're not necessarily seeing now. On top of that, a lot.
Such as?
Sorry?
Such as?
Like, let's think. In terms of the early on in Singapore, there were a lot of housing policies, maybe, and you understand the focus on nuclear family. But now you see greater representation of women in higher education, women pursuing careers,
Right.
pursuing advanced careers, putting off having children a little bit later. I think we should reconsider this hyper focus on the nuclear family in terms of our housing system. Are we really serving the current generation?
I
With our
agree.
BTO
Like we can
system?
reduce it to 30 years, right? Doesn't have to be 35. You can own a house at 30 or something, yeah. If you're single.
Absolutely. We
Yeah.
absolutely understand why those policies were put in place decades
Yeah.
ago, but the modern era, we have to rethink it a little bit, and we're not seeing an openness to question some of these policies that have worked so far. Like there's a little bit of a sense of complacency. This has worked so far, so we're going to keep doing this instead of listening to you.
Yeah.
So a little bit of frustration, but and a little bit more lighthearted side would be on social media. We're seeing a lot of cringe videos with political candidates. There's a lot of people singing. There's a lot
Yes.
of
Can you take
stories
them
of
down? Both the PAP and opposition. The opposition is also
Yeah.
doing this. I cannot take it. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not targeting anyone. It's a very general thing. It feels very performative, and I think we're seeing through it. I don't know how the other generations have responded to these political tactics, but I'd say for Gen Z, we can see through a lot of these performative aspects, right? If you're just singing, telling us your humble backgrounds, but you're not really addressing structural issues that we care about, how you're going to listen to us when you're elected into parliament,
Yeah.
it does feel a bit frustrating this process of
Gen,
democracy and exercising your vote.
Gen Z is a difficult bunch, as you should be. You shouldn't fall for TikTok videos, right? And this is the crazy thing, right? That politicians think it will work, and but that is the TikTok generation that will not vote based on TikToks, right? And it's not. It depends on what kind of TikToks, right? If it's TikToks, I think Lawrence Wong's PM's TikToks are not bad. Even Ong Ye Kung, not bad. But there are
Mm.
some that they just jump on any trend. If there's no information, there's no education. Wow, that those are the worst, right? So there's a question here about the young being apathetic. So I'll let you respond in a while. I do want to talk about it. I know Shu Hui, you mentioned that Parliament rejected a motion by PSP to abolish the JRC. Yes, but that doesn't mean we don't knock on the door or at least get a public discussion. So you mentioned that your vote won't matter. Now, as a political scientist, I have to fundamentally disagree with you. Our first disagreement of the night. And I think no matter what, even if it's the worst opposition party contesting, your vote always matter because your vote goes to the overall vote share. So
Mm.
if you vote PAP, it sends a message that endorsing the PAP. If you are not voting PAP,
Mm.
you're sending the message that are not. So it doesn't matter whether it's in. And I always say you must vote based on conviction, right? If you like the PAP and you think this is the way to go, that's where you should. If you don't, you shouldn't vote out of fear, and you shouldn't vote out of despair as well, thinking that what's the point of me? Let me just go on my holiday, right? So I would
Yeah.
gently disagree with you on that. Mm. Yeah. So the other thing is the third world to first. Absolutely, I think, and you can't blame young people because they can only judge by what they see. If they were born into first world comforts, it's very legitimate for them just to expect that as the norm. So if
Yeah.
standards drop,
Mm.
you cannot say, oh, but look at Timbuktu, right? Look at Vietnam. You cannot say, you know why? Because I don't live in Vietnam. I don't vote in Vietnam.
Yeah.
So I don't vote in Mali, right? I vote in Singapore. I can only compare Singapore to the best of what Singapore can be. That's what I always compare Singapore to. So you're absolutely right. I think people trying to say, oh, look at other countries is worse and so on. I don't
Mm.
really think that's a winning argument. Although I've heard that a
Uh,
lot, in the past week. I've heard that a lot in the
uh,
past week. Yeah.
Same.
Same.
A lot of strong generation accusations also. You know, they talk about the issues that matter to Gen Z, and they're very quick to say strawberry generation. Or in the past,
Yeah.
I had to work two jobs from the
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
age of
Yeah.
14 for that. And we're obviously grateful that we've gotten to this point, and the fact that we can care for issues bigger than ourselves, we can have empathy for groups that are not our own communities, is a testament to the progress that Singapore has made as a nation. And I think the capacity to have empathy is a privilege, and it's one that Gen Z is rightfully exercising. So we're caring a lot more about climate justice. We're caring about workers' rights. We're caring about world different affairs happening across the world. We're caring about the migrant workers in our communities, and these are things that I would say didn't really take the forefront in terms of the older generations, because now we have the privilege to care about those things. So it's a good thing that we've gotten to a place where we're so comfortable that we can care about all these extra things. And calling us strawberry generation, I think is quite condescending and reduces
Hmm.
both efforts that have been put in to get to where we are, and the efforts being put in by the current group of Gen Zs trying to make a difference.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I must confess, I'm sometimes guilty of that with my students. I like to call them that just to throw them off a bit. So I am guilty of that. Thank you for that. I appreciate what you say, and I definitely agree with it. The comment section is quite lit. Young voters are apathetic. What do you think? Can you dismantle that argument?
I don't know if I can dismantle it. I was definitely in that position very, very recently. It's also a comfort that we've come to take for granted, to be able to not care so much about politics growing up. I think first 20 years of my life, it really didn't affect me too much. I didn't have to think too much about politics. I've only started to care recently because of my ability to vote. And maybe we can talk about this later, about allowing more people to vote. Because once you get the right to vote, you get to share your voice. You have a greater stake in this. You care a lot more. You want to contribute to
Right.
your
So you mean what?
community.
Lowering the voting age? That's what you would propose.
I am hinting at lowering the voting age.
I am
Yes.
in favor of that as well. So let's discuss that later. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so once you have a stake in the system, you reach the age of 21, now you reach the voting age. Then you become a little bit more aware, a little bit less apathetic. For me, the wake-up call was really seeing how stupid they took us to be. And I think I'm quite a petty person. If you're condescending towards me, you're telling me to not believe my own eyes, I'm more likely to spring into action. And that's what's been happening over the past 2 months. Even in my group of friends, we're really following the trend, and it's a global trend of Gen Z, especially of college students, right? There's a huge movement of activism and advocacy in college students. It's a global movement. We're following along. We're growing with our generation in a community that's bigger than Singapore.
And that's because of Palestine. I mean, it contributed a lot. I mean, it's not only, but it's because of that, right?
I think so, at least in terms of connecting all of these global groups. The Palestinian protests, from what I've observed, have been the catalyst in
Yeah.
in
I mean, and
kick.
you're in the thick of it. You're in the UK, right? That's where student active. That's where apartheid ended, by the way, right? Yeah. But that's where colonialism started as well. So, what is your take on the ruling party's strategy to have 3 female ministers anchoring their respective GRCs? Grace Fu, Indrani Raja, and Josephine Teo. So all 3 of them are leading the GRCs. Do you have any comments on that? Does
I think I already.
that matter to Gen Z? This kind, because Gen Z does talk about representation. So does this matter to Gen Z?
Representation in what sense? Or I didn't hear the full question.
So do you have any comments about women ministers anchoring the GRCs? Three women ministers.
Women ministers. I think we don't necessarily buy that the fact that, just given that we have the same identity, that means you're fighting for my rights. I think Miss Sim Ann said recently, talking about housing policies, and made some comment about how we want to encourage younger couples to buy homes and teach women to run the household from a young age, right? So you're a woman, but you might not necessarily be campaigning for women's rights. And feminism, I think, also takes a lot of different forms across generations, right? For second, third wave feminism, it's evolving as a movement, and maybe we don't resonate so much with having those women ministers just because they're women, right? Like we want to see a little bit more. We want more concrete policies in place to show that you're pro-woman. It's not enough that you're just a woman in parliament for us to believe that our voices will be heard.
Okay, absolutely. That's great. So, there's a comment by TVST. I feel genuinely insulted by those TikTok videos. Are we Gen Zs that stupid? Yeah, I think a lot of people. So I think the politicians are not reading the ground. I don't think Gen Z, just because Gen Z like a video and comments late doesn't mean that translate into votes, So I think that's what they need to understand. There's a comment by Z, let's not have monolithic stereotypes of youths, and that's true. Youths also cut across gender, class, education, all sorts of other cleavages as well. Is this true?
Correct.
I feel that younger voters are questioning the PAP more, whereas older voters tend to vote the PAP without much thought. What do you think?
I'd say from what I see, yes, but I might be in quite a bubble. I must admit. But like I said in the past, the narrative of going from third world to first created a very strong national identity because a lot of people in those generations experienced the growth of the country, the evolution of the country. Whereas Gen Z, we no longer have such a strong narrative being fed to us. So that, of course, leads to the questioning a little bit more of the ruling party. Yeah.
Okay. So there's another question, Shugoi. What do you see more clearly living outside of Singapore at the moment? So obviously this is in regard to Singapore politics, Singapore elections,
Mm,
or Singapore politics more broadly. What do you see there? Having lived in London, because and I used to live I used to live in London. You're living in Oxford, and I met many Singaporeans who went on and on about how UK was terrible and they couldn't wait get back to Singapore. I'm sure you know some of those Singaporeans there as well, right? Singapore is
mm,
when they go overseas, Singapore is the best country in the world, and it's from the moment they went, right? They didn't want to have an open mindset in terms of accepting that there's going to be differences and there
mm,
are going to be drawbacks to openness and the strength of trade unions. You're probably going to get strikes. No, it's okay if you're still not in favor of that. But I think a lot of people were not open to that from the start. So, as in this, I want you to answer a question, but I just wanted to say to Shohei that just because you live overseas doesn't mean suddenly you are more enlightened. That's all I'm saying. Yeah. So, but what do you think?
mm.
What do you see more clearly?
What do I see more clearly? I think that there were a lot of things that I took for granted living in Singapore, growing up in Singapore, and then since I turned 20, I've lived in the Netherlands, Japan, and the UK. So quite a
Wow.
few countries that we might often look up to. So like you said, there's some things that I look up to, some things that I realize, well, I've been just taking for granted in Singapore, like the efficiency of the system. I really like the public transport in Singapore as much as we make noise if
Yeah.
trains break down. But I also respect, for example, their work-life balance. I do feel like a lot of people here are happier, especially the kids. When I moved overseas, I did have to unlearn a lot of habits that have been ingrained in me when I grew up in Singapore. A lot of the hustle culture. I literally had to learn how to have a hobby, which
Right.
I think is quite crazy for a 20-year-old to learn. So a
Yeah.
lot of the realizations that are more on a personal level. Not, I don't think I have so much to comment on the systemic
Mm.
institutional level.
And your
Mm.
hobby was crunching numbers for the justice.
I mean, sometimes it's being petty and respond, being petty and respond. Sometimes being petty when I go out to a restaurant and they charge me £20 for a dish that tastes horrible, and then I'm like, you know what, I can do it better.
Right.
It drives a lot of the thing. A
Okay,
lot of my
that's
free time is
wonderful.
driven.
You are
Yes.
directing your pettiness in a productive way. I see
Thank you.
Andre just joined. Andre, well done. I heard you really did well at the rally. He's a WP candidate for Jalan Kayu, and I interviewed him a couple of weeks ago. So well done, Andre. So, all right, let's get to it's almost 1 hour already. Can you believe it? Let's get to the voting age. So, why do you think? So, I actually agree with you, but I'm just gonna play the government supporter, okay? The role of government supporter, right? So at 18,
Okay.
people don't know what they want, right? People don't know what they
Mm.
want at 18. Your frontal lobe is not fully developed until you're 24, 25, right? So why do you
Mm.
want? 21 is already too early. Why do you want to reduce it? At 18, they don't even know who they are yet. How can we trust the most important decision into of any country? The most important decision is choosing their leaders, right? How can we leave it to these young fools?
Yeah, young fools. We definitely hear that a lot, and I want to raise a perspective that I haven't really seen uh, that much around, and it's about education system. And the fundamental function of an education system is to create functioning members of society, people that can contribute to society. And Singapore standardized education ends at 16 or 18, right? So let's say you tell me maybe someone that's 25 years old is more mature than someone that's 18-year-old, but there's nothing structurally, institutionally in place to make a 25-year-old more fit to vote than an 18-year-old, because after 18 everyone goes on so many different paths. People go to uni, people start work, people join the not join people go to NS, right? They serve in the military, they're firemen, policemen. We go through so many different paths that there's nothing systematically that you can point to that says, okay, a 21-year-old is better than an 18-year-old in terms of making an informed choice. So really all of the education to equip you to be an informed voter should have been done by the time you're 18.
Right.
If an 18-year-old is not an informed voter, it's because the education system didn't do its job
Right. Oh, that's
properly.
an excellent point. That is an excellent point. Okay, well done. I'm sold.
Thank
As
you.
the supporter of the government, I'm sold. But you
Yeah.
see, and Malaysia has done it. Malaysia has done it, you know. So, and I didn't see like a country plunging into chaos or any more than or any less than before, right? Because of young voters. So,
Mhm.
uh, so I do think you are right. You are right. So, why? Another thing I would add is, the boys carry guns at 18 and they are allowed to make decisions about life and death, right? Especially if you're in the police, right? Of course, in the army, it's more theoretical, but you're still allowed to. In the police, you are making these decisions on not on a daily basis, but you have the opportunity to do it on a daily basis. So it doesn't make sense that there are all these contradictions, right? And then the
Mhm.
polling agent can be 18, but the voter cannot be 18. So this
Yeah.
is it.
You can work, you can pay taxes. By the time you're 18, you can get married, have
Yeah,
children. At this point, it's
which is a
like,
far more consequential decision than
yeah,
your one vote, right? So it's just crazy. I think I agree with you as well. This is something that we should try to push for. So sounds like we have a lot to do.
yes. My
Yes.
work doesn't end. I've been focusing on the GE, but there's quite a bit more that I want to explore, and we'll see how everything plays out in the next few weeks.
Yeah, all right. So I am definitely on board, and let's take that offline as well, how we can work together to hopefully write something, and maybe we can get more people involved as well. So sorry, there was a question I think by Haikal. So we'll end on this. What are top three concerns that you and people around you, younger people, have for the elections as a young voter?
Wow. I really don't think I can speak for for all
Yeah,
of the
okay,
people
yeah.
uh, around me. Me, I think housing, we really need to rethink our housing policy. That's number one. The second thing is education. I'm quite passionate about education. Before I started talking about elections, I wanted to do some work in science communication, science outreach. So I really do think that we can rethink our education system a little bit, make learning more fun and less of a chore, especially for younger Singaporeans. We've all been through that system, whether we thrived in it or suffered in it. I think it came at quite a cost to young people's mental health. And thirdly, wow, what else? Mm, I think in general, just being heard by the politicians. Gen Z, like you said, we're a very vocal bunch. We are already talking about the things that we care about. There's so many advocacy groups out there led by Gen Z, so many like climate rally,
Yeah.
Labor Day rally, all led by Gen Z. We're very loud and vocal about what we care
Do
about.
you
So
think
all
you
we
don't
want
have
is to.
enough space to do that? Why is that? Why is that one of your concerns? Do you think there's not enough space at this point in time?
I don't think it's being given enough weight. I think it's getting dismissed very quickly. It's like, oh yeah, young people's concern, and not something that people are taking seriously on the institutional level. So I think that's the third concern, and hopefully that speaks for more than just myself.
How old are you, by the way, Joe?
I am 23 to
Okay.
2001 maybe.
Think if
Mm.
every 23-year-old was as eloquent and clear-headed as you, level-headed, clear-minded as you, I think we would be in a good shape. I know I wasn't when I was 23. Yeah. So thank you. Do you have any final words you want to say, Joe?
No, thank you so much for having me. Hopefully, I'll be
It
able
was a
to
pleasure.
continue.
Yeah.
Mm,
Continue to do your good work, man, on TikTok. Really appreciate it.
thank you so much.
Bye bye. Take care. Bye.
Bye. You.
Good night, everyone.